Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have the great pleasure of having the splendid Lady Glenconner to speak to us. She became a literary sensation a few years ago with her wonderful memoir, A Lady in Waiting, which not only was shocking, moving, and quite beautifully written, but also, I felt, a very tender, loyal account of a great friendship between herself and Her Royal Highness the Princess Margaret. Today we're here to talk about her latest book, which is just out in paperback and which you can buy lots of copies of later, Picnic Papers. Now, it is also stories about friendships with a few recipes attached. Although Lady Anne says that she didn't actually cook for herself until she cooked her first meal in her 80s.
Very shaming.
Which is rather like Deborah Devonshire, the Duchess of Devonshire, who started her cookbook by saying, "I haven't cooked since the war." But here in these pages you'll find Diana Cooper, who rather loved having a surprise at a picnic which included busts of emperors. You'll find Diana Cooper also pulling Winston Churchill out of an African ravine using the white tablecloth from the picnic, and her son John Julius Norwich, who kept cold water during his travels in the Sahara, kept it in the body of a dead goat, which is quite fascinating, and Harold Acton eating foie gras with Chinese bandits. But Lady Anne, let's start with Princess Margaret, who flew you here one year to have a picnic at Osborne House. But let's go to Hampton Court first of all.
Well, we were. I mean, this was my friend and I in the 80s, had this idea. We got Harold Acton first, it was a great coup. He said he'd write one for us. And Diana said, would you ask Princess Margaret whether she would write a picnic? So she used to come and stay with me in Norfolk in my house. And after several whiskies and sodas, I said to her, "Ma'am, by any chance, would you write a picnic? We're doing this picnic book. And it's going to be in aid of the Glambourne Trust." So she said, "Well, you know perfectly well, Anne, I absolutely hate opera." So I said, "Well, they don't only do opera, they do ballet," because she knew a lot about ballet. Anyway, to my surprise, she said, "Yes, okay, I'll write one," which she did. But her picnic was, I never knew if she had a tongue-in-cheek slightly. She said you had to have a picnic indoors because of the weather, and preferably bring your butler with you to ensure that everything's going all right. Anyway, she did write the most charming picnic, and various friends, we all went down, and she did have our butler, who did see everything was all right. So that was a great coup, because she'd never written anything like that before for anybody. But she was a great, great friend, personal friend of mine, and partly why, I mean, I didn't start writing till I was 87. And that was really my dear husband, who's lovely in lots of ways, but when he died, I'd been with him 54 years. I was married to him, and I was looking after him because, poor thing, he had cancer. But he left nothing to me in his will, or my children. We weren't even mentioned, and that was a sort of final nail slightly in the coffin. But he did make a good turn, because I happened to be sitting next a wonderful picnic in Norfolk, next door to a young publisher. And I was rabbiting away, which I'm going to do to you now, with my stories. And he said, "Have you ever thought of writing a book?" And I said, "No, of course not. I'm 87. I can't type. I can't do anything." So he said, "No, it's not so much, it's your voice that is necessary. That's what's going to help." And it did, because, in fact, I dictated my book. And as you know, Lady in Waiting was this huge success. It's now sold over 1.5 million. It's been translated into 24 countries, including Russia and Ukraine, which is slightly awkward because my letters to my fans in Russia, obviously rather different to the ones in Ukraine. Anyway, I hope I've managed that. Anyway, to get back to picnic papers, that's my trouble. I go off on a tangent.
But we love
You're
your
going to
tangents.
find it rather difficult, actually.
We love your tangents, Ian. I think even in this book reveals wonderful things about Princess Margaret, and how she and Roddy Llewellyn used to love weeding your border or laying your fires, or she liked to clean your car, just doing ordinary things.
I think sort of slightly Marie Antoinette, but she used to come with her marigold gloves. And I was thrilled when she said, "Anne, I think your car needs a clean. Can I clean it?" I think, "Of course, ma'am, absolutely." And I'd actually go with a bucket. And then I never knew about mats for weeding. Anyway, when she came, she used to come stay with me quite often with Roddy, who I'm afraid I introduced her. I mean, that was a complete accident, because we were giving which we did quite often, a big house party at Glen in Scotland. And one of our younger young men who were coming, suddenly said he couldn't. And it was August. And in those days, everybody left London in August. But luckily, Colin rang and said to an old aunt in there, "Do you know of any young man that might come up?" And she said, "Yes, actually there's a charming young man called Roddy Llewellyn." So he came up to Edinburgh by train, and Colin and Princess Margaret and my son went to meet him. I was left behind, sort of trying to get the house ready. And anyway, they left with Princess Margaret and Colin sitting in the front of the car. Well, when they came back, I think very odd, because Colin's sitting with my son in front. Where's Princess Margaret? As the car drove up, there was Princess Margaret and Roddy literally sitting in the back seat holding hands. It was just like that. And I said to Colin, "Oh, heavens, what have we done?" I mean, it's so embarrassing. I could see the Queen absolutely livid, you know, which I'm afraid she was at the beginning. But there's nothing we could do, and they just fell in love like that. And of course, actually, funny enough, Roddy looked slightly like Tony, but he was such a kind person compared to Tony, who was, I'm afraid, not at all kind to Princess Margaret. Anyway, they had a very happy several years together, and they used to come and stay with me in Norfolk, just alone. I used to have them to get away from the press. Actually, luckily, nobody realised they were staying with me, so it worked.
Let's just go for a moment. We'll come back to Princess Margaret, but let's just go to a moment to James Lee's Mill, he starts his piece, "I loathe picnics."
Well, I think in the book, I mean, I had so many people who loved picnics. The English loved picnics, and we were a picnic anywhere, really. But it was rather nice to have one or two people who hated picnics, and he was one. And of course, what I did when I redid the book was to sort of take out one or two duds, I'm afraid. But luckily, they mostly died, so they were... You never know, I took them out. But I wanted one or two sort of people, you know, like Graham Norton. And of course, Graham Norton, being brought up in Ireland, had never had a picnic. And he thought people were mad looking at us all sort of shivering with lettuce leaves and everything blowing away. And he said that to him, a picnic was buying something completely unsuitable in a garage that was sweet and fatty, and being able to see a tree. You know, that was his idea of a picnic. But I think a lot of people were so generous in giving us picnic, because originally it was sold, as I said, in aid of Glyndebourne, and my charity, which was called, not at all suitably called nowadays, but it was called the Stars Organisation for Spastics. I think it changed its name actually now, but I can't remember what. And now, because of the Queen, really, the present Queen, who knew about my life, and encouraged me to, write about domestic abuse. And so this book is now being sold in aid of domestic abuse.
That's very generous. We're talking about Queen Camilla, not the real Queen.
No, Queen... Well, I agree. But as I was lady-in-waiting to Princess Margaret for 34 years and was in the household, I'm so used to. I mean, people often say to me, "Did she never ask you to call her Margaret or anything?" I couldn't have dreamt of doing that. I mean, always called her ma'am. And she never asked me to actually. I mean, when I was young, because I knew Princess Margaret when I was 3, because I was brought up in I don't know whether any of you have been to Holkham Hall in Norfolk. It's one of those big stately homes. And I was brought up there, and it's only 12 miles from Sandringham. And so Queen Mary, who was a friend of my grandmother's, used to bring what I used to call Princess Margaret, and Princess Margaret Rose, in fact, in those days, she liked being called that, and the Queen. And I remember, because I was just a little bit younger than Princess Margaret, but I realized at once that she might be a marvelous friend. We were both quite naughty, actually. And the Queen was just a bit older than us. And the one thing that we were told, there's a big marble hall at Holkham, that we were not allowed to take our tricycles and bicycle round. Of course we did. Princess Margaret and I were happily going round and round. I remember the Queen coming down, age 9, she's coming down the stairs with some, and she said, "Margaret, Anne, what are you doing? Very, very naughty." And I remember we screamed with laughter and then buzzed off. But she was always, the Queen was always looking out for Princess Margaret, and she did that right until Princess Margaret died, actually. And after that terrible book that Harry wrote about called Spare, of course, Princess Margaret was the spare. And, I mean, if anything had happened to the Queen, she would have been Queen, you know. But she never, ever complained. She was always very, very loyal to the Queen, and they used to ring each other up, you know, every day. And she behaved as a spare should, actually. I mean, she was fantastic.
She was unbelievably beautiful as a young woman.
Well, she's ravishing. I mean, she's Elizabeth Taylor didn't, you know, I mean, she was absolutely beautiful. And I think having had that, people also say, "Do you think she would have been happier married to Townsend?" I don't know whether she would, actually. I think the Queen was very wise, because she said to her, "I'm not stopping you marrying him, but you've got to wait for 2 years until you're 26, and then she would have been able to marry him." And he was sent off to Belgium. And by the time he came back after 2 years, I think she actually really didn't want to marry him. And she made the excuse that as the Queen was head of the church, and of course, divorce was, you know, that was very restricting. I mean, you couldn't go to Ascot in the royal enclosure if you were divorced. We'd be pretty empty now if you, if you couldn't. Anyway, but I mean, people forget that, how important it was. And I remember, because for a reason, I had a flat in London that was being done up after Colin had gone off to the West Indies. And she said to me, "Do come and stay while it's doing." And I said, "Well, yes, I'd love to. I don't think, probably 2 weeks would be great." Well, in fact, I stayed with her for a whole year. So it was incredible living with her for a whole year. And she said to me one day, "Oh, Peter Townsend is coming to lunch." And so I wasn't asked to lunch, but I hung out of my bedroom window to see. And I saw this very old man getting out of the car, and he went. And then after he'd gone, Princess Margaret, I got a message, would I go down and have some coffee with her? So I went down. I said, "Oh, ma'am, how was it? How did it go?" "Oh," she said, "he hasn't changed at all." And I thought that was so touching, you know. And he died, I think, quite soon after that. But I don't think she would have been particularly happy married to him.
Was there anyone else that she would have been very happy? I think she was escorted by your late husband.
Yes,
Lord
well, I mean,
Glenconner.
Collins went, the press thought he might. I don't know, really, who she. I mean, there were one or two people that she couldn't marry, you know. I mean, married.
Who were already married.
I mean, I think from that point of view, I mean, she sort of played you know. But anyway, perhaps people better talk about something else. I'm getting rather bogged down here with Princess Margaret's love life.
Well, let's skip to her royal life. I mean, you went to Bondi Beach together, didn't you?
Well, that was when I was first asked to be lady waiting. I'd had 3 boys first. Sadly, of course, 2 of them are no more. And I longed for a daughter. And lo and behold, I got twins. I got twin daughters. And Princess Margaret said to me, she said, Anne, she said, are you going to have any more children? Because I hope not. So I said, well, no, Mum, I absolutely, but why? So she said, in that case, I'd like you to become one of my ladies in waiting. And a lady in waiting, people often ask me, what a lady in waiting? Well, we're really a go-between. I mean, people ask us questions. I mean, people used to ring me up and said, what colour is she wearing today? Because we want the flowers we're giving her to match. And then I would say, which always made it much easier, what she liked to drink, what she liked to eat, you know, and all that sort of thing. Anyway, my first trip was going to Australia with her. And the first thing we did was to go to a race meeting, a big race meeting. And her shoes got rather wet. And so before lunch, she took them off and she said, look, Anne, perhaps you could take them to the ladies' cloakroom and get somebody to dry them. So, which I did. When I went back to fetch them, the lady produced them, and they were unrecognisable. I said, what have you done? Oh, she said, I put them in the microwave. I said, well, it was awful. We didn't have any other shoes. So I went back to Princess Margaret and I said, Ma'am, I'm terribly sorry, but she said, are those my shoes? And I said, yes, I'm afraid they are, but they've been... Anyway, she sort of hobbled, she put them on and hobbled around and looked absolutely livid, furious towards me, as if I'd done it. And anyway, we then went to Sydney, where they wanted her to go on Bondi Beach, which is rather like kissing the Blarney Stone, you know. Anyway, she said, I absolutely refused. She said, I can't bear sand in my shoes and all that sort of thing. So they came to me and said, you know, would it be possible, can you persuade her? So I said, well, leave it to me, I'll do my best. And I went up to her lady's maid and I said, have you got a flat pair of shoes that belongs to Princess Margaret? She produced a pair. Anyway, so I put them in my bag. On the way to Bondi Beach, I said, Ma'am, I just wonder, would you reconsider going? And so again, she stuck her foot up in my bed and said, look at my shoes, I can't. So I said, actually, I have got a pair of real flat shoes. And what was rather nice about her, she just looked at me and she said, okay, Anne, you win this time. But she got her own back, because the next day we went to Sydney Zoo. And the koala bear may look very sweet, but it isn't. It's got those horrible claws. And they wanted her to hold this koala bear. And she said, well, actually, I know my lady-in-waiting's very fond of animals. I'm sure she did. So this horrible thing was put in. And, of course, I had one of my best dresses, wee-wee, the whole way down my dress. And when we got back in the car, I turned to her and I said, well, ma'am, you win this time.
Let's talk a little bit about Mustique, Lady Glenconner. I mean, your husband was the king of Mustique and invented it, but when you started out there, I mean, it was a mosquito-infested swamp.
Well, I thought he was completely mad. He hadn't landed, being Colin, he just sailed round. He heard. Colin was always very keen on islands, because when he was a boy, Glen in Scotland, in the borders, that's where he grew up. And there's a loch and a tiny lake, a tiny island on the loch, which he'd adored. He had a little house there with his brother. And he'd always been trying to buy islands. He tried to buy Pretty Maddalena off the coast of Italy. Luckily, for Maddalena, there was a sort of thing he couldn't build on it, so that escaped Colin's attention. But he heard there was this, the tenants had land in Trinidad, actually. It was a mahogany estate and rather grim, and we went out there, and at the same time he heard that there was this island for sale. These two sisters were selling it because their brother, it was a cotton estate, had died, actually. He died. Anyway, Colin sailed down there, didn't land, bought it. I then went out the next year with him, and I was horrified. I mean, it wasn't called Mustique for nothing. The mosquitoes were this big, and I'd never been sort of abroad like that, so they bit me. I sat in the cane chair, and they bit me all through the holes on the cane chair. And there were wild cows. There was a small cotton estate, and a very little village of tin huts. It was all. Anyway, Colin and I then spent 12 years there, more or less alone, developing it. And we also made St. Vincent was our mother island, so we went over to St. Vincent. We did quite a lot of charitable work there. And then in Mustique, I used to teach in the school. And Colin said, look, we're building a new village for the people who live here before we develop. And then our first, there was a lady on a Schwader, who was a Guinness, arrived in her yacht with her new Polish husband, of course, who was an alcoholic. And she said, I can't stand another minute on this boat with him. Can I buy a piece of land? And she bought, in fact, 2 pieces of land, and Colin let her have a tiny beach. He never sold the beaches after that, because the beaches were for everyone. And that's how we started. And now, I mean, all the royal family have been there, including Prince Andrew went there with Coo Stark, actually, a long time ago. The Queen came 3 times, actually, to Mustique, really in order to see Princess Margaret's house. And the first time she came, Colin's mother, who's very eccentric, we said to her, would she buy some clothes for everybody in the village, and nice dresses for the ladies and suits and everything like that. And she arrived with all these boxes, and so we were very excited. We started to open them. My dear, she bought a job lot of Victorian clothes. So I said, well, look, the people in the island don't know what to wear when the Queen comes. They think that these clothes, although they're rather out of date, but so we dressed them all up. The ladies had some crinolines, and the men had stove pie, and then I taught the ladies how to curtsy, and the men, just to bow the head, not to do this. And so, anyway, they all had chairs, and I said, well, when the Queen arrives, you all stand up. And of course, none of them stood up. They were absolutely amazed. And when the Queen got the top to Princess, she turned to Princess Margaret, and she said, I had no idea that Mustique was in a Victorian time warp. And so the Princess Margaret had explained that no, we weren't in a Victorian time warp, but Colin's mother had bought all these clothes, and we thought, why not? But the Queen was wonderful. I mean, Princess Margaret showed her everything. And because we have very little water, the lavatories, so the flush only was half a flush, we put a brick in the cistern like that, she said. And anyway, the Queen I heard Princess Margaret taking the lid off and showing the Queen. It was absolutely, I remember the Queen saying, well, why is a brick in there, Margaret? And Princess Margaret explained. But she was absolutely charming. The Duke of Edinburgh, naturally, was not terribly polite to poor Colin, and said, when he looked round, I see you've ruined the island, which wasn't very encouraging. But anyway, we'd arranged for him to do something very unusual, which was to go and see sharks. There was a special bay, very, very shallow bay, and once a year, for about 3 weeks, the mother sharks came in to give birth, and they rubbed their fronts, or what do you call them, on the sand. And anyway, he went down and saw that, and was absolutely thrilled. actually was very nice to Colin, you know, when they left, and said I really enjoyed being here and all that. So, I mean, that was, and the Queen swam. You know, she never swam on a beach in case of being photographed. But anyway, because Colin was very strict and, with the press, and there were no photographers at all, and she swam in a bay called Macaroni. And 2 weeks later, when somebody was showing people around the island, they came to Macaroni and they said, oh, the Queen swam there last week. We haven't changed the water since.
Talking of Macaroni Beach, that's where you used to have picnics with Princess Margaret, isn't it? On the plastic table.
Yes, we did, and of course we've got that famous. We ate a macaroni cheese on macaroni, which we thought was slightly funny. I don't know if anybody else did, but anyway, we've got a real good photograph of us all eating. Yeah. But she always took. I mean, I think Tina Brown in that book.
She's in the book,
and she wrote a picnic. How beautifully arranged. Colin did arrange beautifully picnic, but of course, among what we ate, I think, was sausages, and then a voice on the end of the table, "Where's the mustard?" You know, of course, Princess Margaret. And we didn't have the mustard. And in Tina's
I think it's a recipe for lavender mustard, isn't it?
Yeah, she got somebody frightfully smart to do a recipe for mustard, which I thought...
in my world, it just comes out of the Coleman's jar.
No, well, in her world, it doesn't. It's sort of...
One of the stories which I found most enchanting is called Some Enchanted Evening. It's from our mutual friend, the interior designer, Nikki Haslam. Tell the story.
I know. It was Lady Diana Cooper. He sort of said, you know, let's go out on a boat, we'll have a drink, you know, celebrate your birthday. And so they took the boat out. Venice, wasn't it? I think.
Yes.
So one of the islands. And suddenly she said, oh, what's that? I hear music. And he said, oh, yes, so do I. Shall we go near to this island and see? And, of course, they went to the island, and he'd arranged the most wonderful picnic on the island with an orchestra and everything. And that was for her birthday. And he calls it One Enchanted Evening, doesn't he? But she wrote, of course, she wrote about Churchill. She had this picnic where Churchill had to be rescued with one of the tablecloths, because he got down, he insisted on going down into this valley and couldn't get up. So he was hauled up. Luckily he had lots of security, so they helped.
Managed to get him up with the bodyguards and the tablecloth.
Exactly.
I love the fact that Nicky had organised all the food. Of course, he hadn't cooked it himself. He only does cheese slices from the co-op. But
yeah, and he liked it.
But he'd got Arrighi Cipriani to do it. It all came from Harry's bar. I mean, that's class, isn't it? It's a really classy picnic for those of us who just have a hard-boiled egg and a bit of salt in silver paper.
The trouble about Nicky is, I don't know if any of you, he does a tea towel every year about what's common, tongue in the cheek rather. But what he says about the cheese slices, they're the only thing that isn't common. Everything that we eat is.
I thought there was a very touching entry from your son Christopher in the book about picnics.
Yes, well, the original book, of course, he hadn't had the accident. Those of you who've read my book, I don't want to be gloomy because one can be only too easily gloomy. But the worst part of my life, I suppose, was when I knew my two older sons were dying, one of AIDS and one because he took drugs. Luckily, both of them were married and each had had a son. So I've got part of them still, which is fantastic. But anyway, Christopher didn't die. He had this appalling accident at the same time. And when I was doing this book, he said, Mum, would you like me to write a book about somebody who's disabled, what it's like being disabled, very disabled, and having a picnic? And he did write a very sweet picnic. Because, of course, it is very difficult. He can't sit down very easily. He needs two strong men to help him up. And there are lots of difficulties, but he still, we include him when we can, if we do have a picnic.
No, I thought it was enchanting, because it highlighted the difficulty without a hint of pity.
No, he hasn't, exactly. I mean, his wife's sitting here, I don't quite know where she is, but it's been marvellous, but she will vouch. He never complains. I mean, it's extraordinary, and he is really, finds life quite difficult, you know.
With your great success with Lady in Waiting, you made a lot of new friendships, haven't you, Lady Anne? I mean, Graham Norton, Lorraine Kelly.
Yes, I mean, they were so generous, you know. Yes, I mean, one of the nice things which was getting on to the red sofa, because I'd seen Graham, I'd done something on the wireless with him, and he had actually read my book, because quite often when people introduce, and they actually haven't read the book. And at the end, he said, "So nice meeting you." And I said, "So nice meeting you," and all that. And he said, "Well, I hope I see you soon." I said, "Yes. What about your red sofa?" So he said, "Well, do you want to be on my red sofa?" And I said, "Well, yes, I would." And luckily, they were doing a thing about the Crown, and Helena Bonham Carter was on. And so I fitted in quite nicely as being the one that was genuine, actually. the real sort of... and I wasn't coming on till half-time. And so I suddenly got terribly nervous. And Rupert Everett, who's a great friend of mine, I was his mother's bridesmaid, actually. Poor thing, she died just the other day, sadly. And I said, "Look, Rupert, I'm terrified. I've got too big for my boots, really. I don't know." And he said, "Well, Graham's always full of sexual innuendos. You go on and tell your honeymoon story." So I thought, all right. And I said to Graham, "Look, I can't," you know, Graham's always sort of running over the stage. And I said, "Look, I can't sort of gallop after you. You've got to help me." And to come up, funnily enough, they had to move a camera, and you have to climb a sort of ladder, which is in order to get on the stage there. It's quite a big audience. Anyway, he helped me. And so I just marched straight to the front and told my honeymoon story, which did go down rather well. I mean, I love an audience. I could love
I think we got to hear your honeymoon story.
Well, I think those who read my book, well, I don't know.
Yes, please. Go on. Go on.
Oh, well, all right. Well, the thing was that in those days, when I got, that we didn't sleep with each other. You know, there was no contraception. And so we were all sort of virgins, really. I mean, we were sort of told... The only thing I knew about sex was, but before I went to boarding school, my mother thought she must tell me something. And so she said, "Anne, I just got something to tell you. I think rather important." So I thought, well, oh God, what can that be? And she said, "Well, you know, when Biscuit, my dog's on heat, Daddy's dog tries to get on top of her the whole time." And the thing is, the same might happen to you when you're married. You'll probably be... Well, I wasn't quite sure whether she meant the dog or not. I absolutely appalled. And I said, "Really, Mum?" Yeah. And she said, "Well, it probably happened on a bed." So I thought, well, that's better than on the floor, I suppose. Anyway, so that's all I really knew about sex. And of course, we used to talk about it. We really knew, I mean, nowadays, the young would be amazed by how naive we all are. So anyway, I had a very grand wedding at Holkham, because having no brothers and primogeniture, I was unable to inherit Holkham. I'm the eldest. I always knew that I'd been a disappointment right from the beginning. But my father used to encourage me. I used to work with him in the office, and I knew everything. Anyway, for my wedding, I had 3 wedding cakes. There was a cake and a tent for the people who worked on the estate. There was one for the tenant farmers and all those sort of people, another, and then one in the house for my friends, or actually my mother's friends, including Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother who came. And of course, that was the first time that Princess Margaret met Tony, because Tony was taking the photographs. But in those days, photographers were considered sort of rather like the butcher, the baker. My father called him Tony's snapshot in a rather rude way. And he had lunch alone. I mean, he didn't have lunch with us. But I don't think he never forgave us, really. But anyway. And anyway, this very, very grand wedding, you know, and it all went... well, there's another story, but I think I won't tell. That's my latest book. I'll keep that for my latest book, which hasn't quite out yet.
Well, yes, that's going to be a great surprise.
There is another story there.
Let's go to Paris.
Anyway, we then flew in a small airplane. We had to come down in Guildford or something to do the passports. Arrived at the Lottie at about 2:30 or 3 in the morning. Went up to the bridal suite. 2 single beds. Well, Colin had promised that he wasn't ever going to lose his temper when we were married. Well, he had an absolute tantrum, screaming and shouting. He raced down, was a very frightened little concierge behind the desk. And the only thing the concierge could think of, there was a double mattress in the basement to bring it up and put it over the 2 single beds. So in the middle of the night, everybody came out of their rooms, this awful humping up. And when they got the mattress up, it was just thrown over. And I was still standing in my best silk dress and gloves. I think I'd removed my hat. Colin just lay down on the bed and went to sleep. And I thought, well, it's slightly disappointing. You know, it's not well expected. And the morning, well, something did happen, but it wasn't all that marvelous. And then we went to the Louvre, where we wandered around looking at the Louvre. And anyway, in the evening, Colin said, I got a surprise for you. And I thought, well, maybe dinner at the Ritz, you know. So I dressed up, best dressed, and in we got to this car. And I did think it was odd, because I sort of vaguely knew which way, we didn't seem to be going towards the Ritz or anything. We seemed to be heading out into the suburbs. Then she arrived at this awful-looking place, went in, horrible smell, sort of, went up to this room where there were 2 wing-back chairs, and on the bed in front of us were these 2 disgusting people making love, pasty bodies, horrible squelching noise. And I thought, well, I just can't bear. So I went as far back as I could in my chair. I dreaded to think what Colin was doing, but I closed my eyes. And eventually, they kept on saying, do you want to join in? I said, well, it's very kind of you, but no thank but no thank you. Simply appalling. And eventually, thank God, they finished. I went off, and I said to Colin when he got back, I said, but Colin, why do you take, I mean, why? Oh, he said, I thought it would introduce you to, you know, say, make you more excited. I said, excited? I mean, you know, anyway, that was, and then the honeymoon did pick up, luckily, in the end. But we then, well, the honeymoon was going to last 6 months because the tenants had a lot of businesses in America. There's a sort of mine in Yellowstone Park or some sort that we meant to visit, and various things. And we then went to Cuba. Anyway, when we got in to the Queen Elizabeth, my father had always been very, very strict about open windows. We always had to sleep with windows. And of course, I looked at the portholes, and I thought, well, very stuffy in here. Open the portholes, close the curtains. When we set off in the middle of the night, of course, the most enormous wave came through the porthole, right onto the bed. And Colin then got a cold. He blamed me for the cold. I was rather glad leaving him. I went off and sort of discovered better things in the boat. And while he was in bed, I was rather pleased. I was able to wander around by myself. And then in Cuba, it was slightly better. The honeymoon. Anyway, I think that's all I've got to say about that.
Lady Anne, just before we go to questions and answers,
Yes.
I'd love to talk to you about the real Queen's coronation.
Oh, well,
Queen Elizabeth, because as you probably know, Lady Glenconner was one of the train bearers. Tell us what it was like.
Well, I suppose it was the most marvellous day of my life. You know, some people say, "What was your wedding?" I said, "Well, actually, no, it was a coronation." I'm so lucky to be chosen. We had to be daughters of earls, marquises, or dukes. We had to be the right shape, really. And in those days, of course, nobody, because there was still rationing. And so we all had very nice figures. But there were, of course, one or two very envious mothers, including one, well, I won't actually say her name, she's dead, but perhaps it doesn't matter. And somebody said, well, why wasn't she chosen? And so my mother said, well, the trouble was, she looked as if she had a cactus bush between her legs. And that wasn't the way, we all had to walk and we were all drilled by Bernard Norfolk. It was fantastic, because he'd done the late King's coronation just before the war. And so to do the Queen's, and everything was absolutely, we were measured. I was one of the girls in the middle carrying the train, and the girl opposite me was slightly smaller, so she had to wear heels, I had to wear completely flat shoes. We had one row of pearls, and Bernard went into everything. And we had a lot of, the Duchess of Norfolk was the Queen in most of our rehearsals, but we did one rehearsal with the Queen at Buckingham Palace where she wore a sort of sheet round her waist, went up and down. And I remember at the end, she looked at us, she said, don't worry, I'll look all right on the day. We were a bit... and it was fantastic. And I remember my mother was just been made lady-in-waiting to the Queen. She was one of the ladies of bedchamber, actually. There were two of them, she and Fortune Euston. And so we stayed in the same flat. I actually slept on the floor because there was only one bedroom. My mother had the bed. And she went off to Buckingham Palace to have breakfast there, and then went in the procession. I was driven straight to the Abbey where four of us were waiting for the Queen. And I remember it was raining, it was an awful day, and suddenly we heard her coming. We had this roar of people. And then round the corner came the golden coach. In a sort of way, it was more marvellous because it was raining, because it sort of glistened in the rain. And it stopped in front of us, and Duke of Edinburgh got out the other. Duke of Edinburgh was a bit sort of fussy. We knew exactly what to do, but he thought perhaps we didn't. And his usual form. And we were the first to see her as they opened the coach. So there she was, looking at. She's wonderful. She's wonderful complexion. She's so beautiful. There will never, ever be a coronation like that again, because A, she's so beautiful, so young. The Duke of Edinburgh, to give him his due, was devastating. We were all completely in love with him, in a way, and we just won the war. So we had a huge army, a huge air force, and that was all on display. And it was everybody was so excited. And there was the Queen of Tonga. When we got back to Buckingham Palace to receive her, we saw Churchill and all these people come in, the Queen of Tonga soaking wet because she had refused to have the cover, it was fantastic. And she didn't say anything to us. We got her out of the coach, and the Duke of Norfolk had put a tiny piece of red cloth just where she was to stand, and so she had our back to us, and we were there. The train had little satin handles under it, and because there were six of us, the train was beautifully straight. And then she just looked behind, she said, "Ready, girls?" And off we went. And the whole of the Abbey had been built up, right up to the ceiling. There were 8,000 people, you see, at the Queen's coronation, and only, I think, 3 or 4 at the King's. It was much smaller. And I had this extraordinary luck I mean, amazing, was that King asked me to his coronation. And I was the only one, apart from a few pages, because sadly the six of us, two have died, two got Alzheimer's. That was Rosie Churchill's the only one, but she's a bit old and doesn't talk, do things like this. So I'm the only one. And I felt so lucky. And the Daily Mail asked me to write an article about the Queen's coronation and the King's. The Queen's is easy, I had lots of time, but I couldn't leave the Abbey till about 3 in the afternoon after the King's coronation, and I knew the Daily Mail was ringing me up at 7. So I had to do something very, very quickly, and it wasn't perfect. 2 days later, my daughter rings me up and says, "Oh, Mum, Buckingham Palace wants to get in touch with you." So my heart sank. I thought, oh, God, I'm going to be... But it wasn't. It was absolutely... I think it was 3 or 4 days after the coronation at Wood Farm, which is the farm at Sandringham where the Duke of Edinburgh, the King wants you to go and have dinner with him. And I was alone with him. When I came in to meet him, he looked at me and he said, "How was it, Anne?" And I said, "Well, sir, it was magnificent, but different." And then we went through all the things that, and he'd taken such trouble with the music. The music was fantastic. And I said, well, one of the things that obviously was different was that the six of us were the only girls taking part in the coronation. Of course, the King there were girls in the choir, there were Penny Mordaunt, wonderful with us, and women had taken a great part in his coronation, which actually hadn't happened in the Queen. Anyway, we talked about it a lot, So I am sort of in this very strange position about the only person alive who has been to both coronations and remembers it all.
Lady Anne, how absolutely lovely to hear your stories. I wonder if you might now take some questions from the audience.
Yes, do, if anybody wants. And the other thing I was going to say is I'm going to sign books. If anybody wants a special message, I'd love to talk to you. And, if you want, with lots of love to Auntie Muriel, I'll do that bit.
I'm not very good at being able to see.
Lady Anne, welcome to the Isle of Wight. I know Holkham and very well, and have sat on your right shoulder at dinner many years ago. But you have been privy to so many firsts in the nation's ever-changing circumstances. That was the first coronation that was fully televised, and there you were, a train holder. And did you feel the weight of television and publicity and this being filmed and broadcast around the world on your shoulders, or did you just bat on regardless?
Yes, I mean, the thing was the Queen didn't really want it televised, but Churchill said because of the Commonwealth it's so important to have, and they also made a colour film at the same time. But what I witnessed, which very few other people, the Queen said the television must be turned off when she's being anointed. I mean, they put, the King had something different, the Queen had a canopy. And it was only the bishops and us, we were standing there, saw her being anointed. And of course they put on that white linen dress over her coronation dress, which made her look so young, No, I think originally she didn't really want it televised.
Thank you. There we go.
Thank you. Hello. The coronation is very long. Is it true that they had sandwiches under their crowns?
I can't...
Well, absolutely. But what was even more about it, because the Abbey was built right up, there was only one lavatory. The page boys had milk bottles to go. There was a row of milk bottles with our names on it. That was for the pages. And I believe, because there was no question of anybody right up there, that handbags were used.
The smell melted with the mothballs.
And the one thing I did say to the king, what was so wonderful about his coronation, of course, there were a lot of portaloos. I said there was masses of lavender, because at the coronation, there was one outside in the sort of courtyard, and we'd all been told not to drink anything, no water or anything like that.
Very uncomfortable. I can remember standing with Deborah Devonshire outside St Paul's Cathedral for Charles and Diana's wedding. She said, very grim, only 2 loos.
I know.
Any more questions?
Yeah, well, that's lovely.
Don't be shy.
Well, anyway, thank you for being such a lovely audience.